Hello, good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of Planning and Highways Committee, this being the Tuesday the 13th of February. And this meeting is being recorded for publication on the Thatcham Town Council YouTube channel. So if we turn to the agenda, firstly, apologies for absence.
None received, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Councillor Pemberton.
So agenda item 4, the actual planning applications. It's probably useful for me to declare that I sit on Eastern Area Planning over at West Berkshire Council. Obviously, we've got one particular application on the list tonight for over at Hambridge Lakes. And depending on how the debate goes and any objections raised by ward members, it might be appropriate for me to abstain on any vote that the committee takes.
Thank you. So the minutes of the last meeting. We're only one meeting, yes. So are there any comments on the minutes of our meeting on the 16th of January? No one seeking the floor. So can I propose that we to read and confirm as accurate the minutes of that meeting on the 16th of January? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lund, thank you. And all those in favour? Thank you very much. So we then move on to planning applications. The first of which is Hambridge Lakes. I hand over to the clerk to introduce this, and I think all of the other councillors present are new from May last year, so have not experienced the history. So you might need, if necessary, I can fill in the history, or the clerk can, but it has a history.
Thank you, Chairman. So you have the design and access statement in your packs, which provides much of the information. So the application is for 5 two-bed chalets for recreational holiday leisure use, clubhouse, to be used by anglers. The location, as you can see here, here's the A4. And then Hambridge Road is this one here, just for context. And it's this lake here that is the subject of the planning application. The chalets are 3.7 metres in height and will sit 5.7 metres above the water level. 15 car parking spaces for chalet guests and staff. 2 designated disabled access parking spaces and 2 EV charging points. The chalets will have blue and green roofs for biodiversity and rainwater harvesting, and will be charred timber clad with black grey windows, doors, soffits and fascias. Pedestrian and vehicle access will be from the west on Hambridge Road. And it's just south of this is the Two Rivers Way road estate here, and the entrance will be roughly in this region here. So if we spin round the other way, and that's the River Kent just there. So somewhere around here will be the entrance point. The history of the site: in 2019, outline permission was sought for 41 chalets. That was refused. In 2023, 9 chalets, application for 9 chalets was refused. In 2020, an appeal against the 2019 application for 41 chalets was dismissed. And just yesterday, an appeal against the refusal of the 9 chalets in 2023 was validated, so that will be coming through in due course. There are 5 representations, and to summarise, the concerns that have been raised are not suitable. The lake is not suitable for fishing, road noise, floodplain / flood risks, concern about future expansion and possible future change of use, lack of need, impact on wildlife, inappropriate development and increased traffic. So this here, this is the proposed clubhouse location, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chalets. And as you can see, associated roads and paths around the site.
So if I just add a few points to that. So on the history, the original 41 was, I think, 5 3-storey buildings. That was my first experience of a planning appeal. In fact, I turned up without notice and was given permission to make a representation on behalf of the council, which I wrote over the weekend, and we had an emergency approval. The 9, I spoke at the council meeting. The thing I point out about this is that the clubhouse is, in terms of its construction, not its internal layout, identical to the 5 chalets. So it might, in principle, require relatively little modification to turn into a sixth property. And from looking at the plans, do you have any of the plans that are easily available? Readily available?
On the design analysis.
Okay, so having looked at the floor plans and so on, I would describe them as these dwellings, although these holiday chalets, as being, in terms of their construction, largely indistinguishable from residential accommodation. So I'll come on to members of the public later. So that's a sort of introduction. Obviously, and the other thing to say, which affected the previous, was a consideration in the previous application, is that the site, the part of the site that runs along the A4, a lot of the undergrowth was cleared a couple of years ago in order for Thames Water to replace the main sewer that runs underground there. So that opened up the site, the visibility of the site, and that was a matter of detailed discussion at length between opposing expert consultants in the appeal. So I turn first to the councillor, so Councillor Lunn.
I'm not sure how much information we have with regards to the clubhouse. Do we know anything along the lines of the number of hours per day they intend to man it? Whether there is an application for a...
So at this stage, this is a planning application, so there's nothing. There is the internal construction is somewhat vague. I would say that if for a site which is intended to be used for fishing, I would have expected some sort of storage of materials and equipment for maintaining the fish stocks and so on, and that's not visible. But basically, there's very little internal construction. Internal, like there's sort of concept drawings of tables and chairs in place, but that's not part of that's obviously not part of the plan. But there's very little that you could say in terms of the internal construction of the clubhouse as to determining its use. One thing that is important there is that there are only 3 parking spaces in relation to the staff, and no other parking spaces for visitors to the clubhouse other than people staying in the buildings described as holiday chalets. So if I make a comment at that point, that if we were minded to make no objection, or if we wanted to put a contingency in, that one of the things we might want to consider is conditions that would prevent the clubhouse becoming a destination for people for whom there's no parking and no other facilities. But that, we'll come back to that a bit later on. Councillor McCann.
Can I just clarify, was it correct that the previously 9 application has been, the appeal has been granted, so?
No, the appeal has been validated. So they have applied, and it's only
validated as approved and accepted as a valid application.
Yeah. So it is entered the pipeline for consideration, but no further, because it's when I looked on the council's website yesterday, it hadn't been.
Yeah, so I forgot about that.
Yeah. So and yeah, the appeal for 41 had to be adjourned for a number of months for further studies of bats and otter droppings, if I recall. So that was quite a lively, I think there was 5 days in total, that planning appeal. So any further questions about this Okay. One other further thing to say is that I've looked at the grounds that we appealed. I think the grounds for the 43, the 41, the design is sufficiently different that I don't think the grounds that we made at that point are necessarily relevant. But I've looked at the grounds that we made for the 9, and one of the things in particular is to refer to policy DM2 in the draft local plan, which refers to the separation of settlements around Newbury and Thatcham. And we referred to that in our objection to the application for 9 chalets. And since that time, that local plan has been submitted for examination. And in planning terms, that increases the weight that would be given to that policy. So I have it here in front of me, should we? And basically, this is one that we strongly supported in our representations on regulation 19. I don't have the map in front of me, but it does cover basically the whole of the area from the parish boundary as far as the roundabout in essence, excluding what's already been built, obviously. So and reading between the lines, so we have what's called a settlement boundary, but I think one of the ambiguities about a settlement boundary is it only relates to settlements, and it's unclear whether buildings that look like houses but for a different purpose fall into that. But this policy DM2 relates to all development. So the policy adds, I think at its current stage, adds significant weight to against the application, and when the local plan becomes approved with this policy in it, that would add even further weight. Any further comments?
Am I right in remembering that this is currently not a current fishing lake and there's no fish in it?
That is a matter of disagreement, I think, differing views. It certainly has been used for a limited amount for fishing. It is not managed by one of the clubs, to the best of my knowledge. But there have been discussions at previous applications as to the extent that it is stocked with fish or could be stocked with fish. And indeed the extent to which the fact that it is it has various small streams discharging into it affects its viability for fish. All of those things were discussed. Probably not things on which we can draw a conclusion without evidence, but no doubt they will be they would be debated between the experts at various times. Any further questions? So in which case I'd like to move to propose that we invite members of the public to speak. So do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Pemberton, and I saw enough hands in favour that that's been agreed. So if member of the public would like to come forward, of course, we are recording. This is being streamed, so you will be, if not on camera, you will be audible if that's okay with you.
Right, my name is Angelica Rivera. I've been here before. I live almost opposite the lake. So I'm very, very familiar with the site and its history, including the fishing history on it. And in the interest of time, I'll just run through a few things, but if you have any questions on, for example, flooding patterns, and things like pollution levels and so on, and fish stocks in the lake, I can take your questions on that. Hambridge Lake has actually not been used as a fishing lake since the Reading Angling Association gave it up, and they gave it up because they found it unsuitable for fishing. And neither the Newbury nor the Thatcham Angling Associations were interested in the site for the same reasons. So that is why the site ended up being sold. It's proved to be impossible to maintain fish stocks for a whole number of reasons, and I can take your questions on that. As you said, this is the 3rd iteration, and the one thing that has been missing from all of them is any kind of real assessment on fishing on the lake, which is quite interesting if you're trying to sell it as an angling location. As you said, it's the strategic gap between the settlements. It's largely in flood risk zone 3. It's outside the local plan area for development, and the only way you can build on it is using the leisure and tourism exemption. But you can't fish on it, and environmental health immediately raised concerns that the noise levels on that junction would be so high that if that was a residential location, they would not approve it. But who wants to go fishing on a lake or staying on a lake if it's too noisy to stay there and you can't angle on it? So you have 24-hour traffic on that junction. I know we live there. It really is noisy during the night. Each of these chalets has 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and an internal floor space of 73 square meters. The clubhouse is slightly larger. I think it's got 76 square meters, but also it has a kitchen facility and there's bathroom facilities. Now, the thing is, if you build something as holiday accommodation and it's then not viable as holiday accommodation, under current rules, councils can then not stop a later application for change of use. So it's a very handy way of developing a site you're not meant to develop. So it really matters as to whether the site is suitable for fishing, because if it isn't, then it doesn't add to the sort of leisure and tourism appeal of Newbury or Thatcham, and the whole validation, or the whole rationale behind developing the site goes out of the window. So this is really, really important. And the other thing that's really important is because of the history of taking everything to appeal to see how much you throw at it until something sticks. I have dug through planning appeals histories and I found a couple of instances where councils have used their inability to prevent a later change of use as their main reason for refusing a planning application at the outset. So that's something that might be really worth remembering. So if you have any questions on fishing and flood patterns, and I mean, the whole area where the access road's meant to be was underwater a few weeks ago. The junction with Two Rivers Way was underwater, and it on the drawing, it looks like there's plenty of room, but if you're actually standing on Hambridge Road and you look at it, first of all the scrub's been cleared, so you have a clear sideline. There doesn't seem to be enough room to fit that in and have screen planting. And that land is marginal. So it's not like it's solid land, it's marginal. So unless you place all that, and also 15 car parking spaces, that's 2 spaces, 2.5 spaces per property in a way. You'd be lucky to get that in a residential environment. So it just reeks of being something else than it's purported to be. But yeah, if you want to know about fishing, and
Perhaps if I just add there that on my way here, I passed by Waitrose, and I happened to notice on the front page of the Times, on the shelf, an announcement from the government to relax regulations concerning change of use into residential accommodation. So obviously, that's...
yeah, they're just waiting for that.
Yeah.
This time round with the application, they have actually submitted a fish survey. I don't know whether you saw that. And it was absolutely hilarious because they found some brook lamprey, but nothing else. So in no target species for sports anglers, there haven't been any in the lake. I spoke to so many anglers in the area, and I said, well, it used to be quite fun before the A4 got so busy to sit around the lake, provided you weren't expecting to catch anything. So even back then, the problem with the lake is the inflow takes all the rainwater runoff from London Road, Fir Tree Lane, or from Benham Hill, from Hennick Hill. It includes fertilizer runoff from the fields, agricultural runoff, and in storm conditions, regularly sewage. If you look at aerial photographs, you can actually see the difference in the lake colour to the lakes beyond. Hambridge Lake acts as the filter for that whole watercourse system beyond it. And if you have algae blooms, particularly blue-green algae. I saw one picture by accident, I stumbled across it the other day. Even in that picture, you can see how the tint in that lake is different. That's a blue-green algae bloom that kills off certainly larger fish, and it kills off a lot of the smaller fish that are part of the food chain. That's part of the reason why they haven't been able to stock the lake. The problem with that is that's down to Thames Water, and Thames Water are not going to start investing in order, so it's completely outside of the control of an operator of that site. And I think in their due diligence, they must have found out about this when they bought the site. So that's why there have never been any. If you look at the drawings, it's never about fishing. Nothing about, is it about fishing, because the lake's not suitable for fishing.
Can I just make a few other points? So thinking back to the history, at the planning appeal, the developers tried to claim that the site was a brownfield site on the grounds it had previously been a gravel pit. The inspector concluded that while that was factually the case, it had returned to a state where it was effectively natural, and that wasn't a material consideration. On the other hand, West Berkshire Council were hopeful that the Natural England would express concerns about the impact of this downstream on the site of special scientific interest, and Natural England at the last minute declined to do so. So that is obviously something out of our remit, but given that that decision has been made, we probably shouldn't be giving too much weight to that particular point. But obviously there are other things, and another point actually, local history. Another development was, there was another development at the far end of Hambridge Lane, which was granted approval on the basis of it being for holiday accommodation, and that has subsequently morphed into, at least in part, into residential accommodation. So West Berkshire Council are familiar with the precedent.
But there are still people letting the Cherrybird lodges.
Yeah.
Anyone, these would in theory be in competition with the Cherrybird lodges, but they are never full. So where is the additional benefit in Newbury and Thatcham? Because it will just be displacement.
Councillor Lunn.
So if it's known that there is sewage into the lakes, does that then pose a question about the sanitary issue with regards to properties actually on the lake side?
They have never submitted any water quality studies or any kind of feasibility on angling, for very good reason, because I think they know this.
So can I just go through another cut of, so going through the reasons why we objected to the last application. The last application, 23, they claimed that this would, that being at this, because this was outside the settlement boundary by a few metres, it would contribute to the rural economy. We disputed that, and I subsequently put in a detailed analysis based on the Office of National Statistics definition of rural, that it wasn't rural, and they have not made that claim this time round. We also questioned the class of application. Obviously, we didn't raise the question about change of use explicitly. We mentioned the draft local plan, and something else we mentioned is the impact on National Cycle Route 4, which is goes along Hambridge Road, and the impact of the junction on that. The original proposal for the access in that application was not as good as that, but even so, that will break the national cycle route at that point. And finally, we mentioned, and I think they do address this in the design and access statement, that bizarrely, the River Kennet to the south of the site is in fact common land in law. So I haven't got to the bottom of what class of common land it is, but it's but that means that it's not necessarily private, which affects, because when they were looking at the views onto the site from areas that the public have access, they didn't consider the river, because that is in fact common land, and therefore not all common land has public access, but that might do. So those were the grounds that we raised last time. We have no reason why we can limit, if we wish to, if we decide to oppose oppose the application or wish to put conditions, propose conditions on it that we shouldn't add others, but those are what we said last time. Councillor Pemberton.
Yeah, I was just wondering if somebody could clarify a point for me, because when I was reading the refusal reasons for the most recent application, there were comments from the SUDS officer about concerns that they had about ingress and egress from the site in events of high waterfall or high water levels. I know we were talking about attenuation rates earlier in the context of water kind of flowing downhill onto the site, but is that not a valid consideration? Bear in mind as well.
It's a complicated one because it's a rather unusual site because it's on a lake and therefore it has an outflow which is much bigger than other sites. So we need to be careful about that.
And then goes out.
It comes in, it goes out much more. And I would suggest that we're probably don't have the expertise to form a definite view, but we can raise concerns about matters that we can certainly raise concerns about matters that would need to be considered. Either if we object or if we decide not to object with conditions. I'm assuming for starting point, we're not likely to support this actively.
We can keep coming up with.
Yeah. So I'm going to pause. Does someone like to make a suggestion between the two cases of making no objection and objecting? Which would we go for, Councillor McCann?
Yeah, I don't mind developers using and exploiting loopholes. That's their job. It's their jobs to shut the loopholes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's their job to find them.
Yes.
If we can, I would suggest we put in restricted covenants on it as part of the planning application, that it has to be only let during fishing seasons, the fishing season, which is quite restricted. That the clubhouse has to be used only as a clubhouse, and that by accepting it as a clubhouse, they can't unclubhouse it. I'm not quite sure the term, but there's something.
Change of use.
Yeah, it's not the change of use, but there's another term that you can use for it.
But I think the point is that if it were a clubhouse, it would be, well, we'll go before we do it, we need to get a seconder, but I think what you're saying is that it would be limited to people residing on the site and not a publicly.
Because legitimately, they could turn around and say, well, we've invited all the local anglers and they're all coming here, and it's now our clubhouse.
Yeah. And that also, and I think that would also limit the number of permits that could be given on the site to the number of parking places that are available, that sort of thing.
So, yeah, so those would tend to be my inclination.
The original plan had, I think, 43 fishing platforms.
Exactly.
It was a recipe for fishing lines to get caught up to each other when they were casting. So, are you proposing as a starting?
I'd like to propose that.
Starting point that we make no objection, but we then move on to developing conditions.
If it is likely to go forward, and there should be a minimum of restricted covenants on the seasons.
Do we have a seconder for the option of making no objection? The other alternative is if there's no seconder, then I will propose that we object and we'll work on that basis. So do we have a seconder for the proposal that we make no objections? And I don't see I don't see a councillor supporting that.
I think, and that's democracy for you.
I will then propose from the chair that our starting point is that we make an objection, and then we'll move on to how we say. So is there a seconder? Thank you. And those in favour of working on the basis of making an objection, so that is carried. Thank you. So we then move on to, the starting point.
Thank you for your comments.
Starting point is that we object, and I would suggest that we then follow up with that. So if the council is minded to not to approve it, we request that the following things are applied as conditions. So I would suggest the first one,
We still have your conditions.
yeah, so let's say before if they are minded to approve it, before doing so, they should consider the viability of it as a fishing lake.
Yeah.
And that includes the water, but the viability for fish and the water quality under both normal and extreme weather conditions. And what else do is there anything else that you'd like to add from your perspective, or go on to the ones about the buildings itself?
But on the fish stocks, the one thing they did find in there was DNA evidence of mackerel, which, I mean,
Usual.
yes, actually, it's if you read the fish report, it's in there, DNA evidence of mackerel. The only way I can think the mackerel got there is in sewage.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's a long way to swim, isn't it?
So, yeah,
The other thing you need to bear in mind is if you want to use it as a fishing lake, it needs to be surrounded in otter fencing. Because we do have an otter problem in the area. And also the other fishing lakes they do not allow day ticket fishing. So anyone staying there can't go fishing or angling in any of the other lakes. So that's quite important. It really would have to be a standalone business and viable as it is.
yeah, and of course, there is no risk, should it be remain as a holiday destination, there would be no requirement that it was used for fishing. So I think if we start by saying the primary reason for our objecting is our concern about the potential for a change of use, notwithstanding the original intention as stated in the application, in the design and access statement. So then we say that if the council's minded to approve it, before doing so, they should require evidence of its viability as a fishing for fishing, including the water quality, both normal and extreme, like its sewage. And then in terms of the approval, there should be conditions about there should be a condition about not changing about not changing of use, because you can have a notwithstanding clause. So it's a notwithstanding permitted development rights, you require planning permission. So there should be one of those. There should be a restriction on the number of the clubhouse should remain as a clubhouse only for use by people staying on the site. And the number of permits for fishing should not exceed the number of car parking spaces allocated to the chalets in the case that they're not occupied. Is there anything else that we
And that bit about it being on land in between Thatcham and Newbury.
Oh yeah, we need to. The other reason for our objection is policy DM2, which I think you can take us to the wording from that and the national cycle route, of course.
Oh, brilliant.
And those are the 2 points that were in our previous objection.
You're not involved in it, are you?
No, not at all. I think we make more money by renting the properties out for
Okay, so
race courses.
Oh, yeah.
Just
It says fishing
some
season.
other place.
I know. Not my business, so.
it's an interesting one. We can try that, yes. So the occupancy should be restricted to the fishing season. I suspect that would be a difficult one to enforce in planning terms, but we don't have to worry. We don't have to be bound by the strict restrictions of planning law. We can propose things which the council finds not in accordance with planning policy, but that's their job.
Exactly.
So, Clark, do you have sufficient notes there to compile that into? So, with that, I think I proposed and seconded it, and we've drafted those amendments. We've had a seconder. Well, can I just agree that I think we need a second vote on those conditions? So I propose that we object with the conditions that we just drafted. Do we have a seconder for those conditions? Councillor McCann has then agreed. Those in favour of including those conditions in our objection. Thank you very much, and thank you very much. And I have a feeling that we might meet again in the planning of
Somewhere in here.
Gonna keep going.
or possibly two.
There will be iteration 4 and 5, and by the way, the planning officer suggested to them in the pre-planning that they should limit the size to 40 square meters, which is more akin to holiday accommodation, but clearly they didn't deem that necessary. It is a different agenda there.
I think that once the local plan becomes adopted, if it contains DM2, that will make it extremely difficult for any application because that's quite a strict policy.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you. So that leaves us only five more planning applications to consider this evening. So we move on to number 2, which is 3 Loundyes Close, which I think is, yes, okay. So I will hand over to the clerk again. I think this is a slightly less expansive development. Expansive, well, yes, yes. We have a sort of threshold there are some things below the threshold that we don't consider, and this is it's above the threshold, but not by a large way, whereas the previous one was right way up there. Okay, thank you. Over to the clerk.
So it's this property here, and as you can see from the plan here, it's quite an extensive rear garden to the property, and it's this one here. And you can see is semi-detached and also link attached on that side. The proposal is to demolish this single-storey side currently utility area and construct a 2-storey side extension to provide increased living accommodation to the ground floor and additional bedrooms to the first floor, increasing from 3-bed to 4-bed. Also to demolish an existing conservatory to the rear and construct a 2-storey rear extension and a single-storey day room. Plans.
Can I just stop you there because I noticed that Google Street View appeared to be thinking that was number 6, but in fact it is number 3. So just for the recording, thank you.
This is the existing the front of the property, and this is the proposed. So this is currently the single story here, and then with the 2-storey on top. They're not the best plans, as you can see. Existing rear elevation, so this will be demolished and replaced with a single-storey day room and a 2-storey extension, which has also got the 2-storey side extension in front of it. From the street scene, similar properties with varying development extensions. See. One representation and the objection raised is for loss of light and casting shadows on patio area, and that is from the resident of this property who is in the chamber this evening.
Okay. Thank you. So you are, well, we've already invited members of the public to speak, so we don't need to do that again. Well, first of all, I ought to ask councillors if they have any questions or comments about this application.
Do we have an aerial Google Maps view?
Well, that's being pulled up. Has anything like this been done on that street? Because it does, I know when they do extensions, semis, they want them to have the roof a juxtaposed so it really looks like an extension.
That's quite a good thing.
Because my biggest concern was apart from the issue that's been raised of possible shadowing and stuff like that, would that restrict the neighbour's right to go up that height and go across, if you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
So the technical term I think you're looking for is subservience.
that's the word.
And I know it well, because one of the councillors, prior to the, previous period,
Yes.
was particularly strong on the need for subservience.
Yeah.
We had lots of discussions on that point. One where, as I saw the drawings, and if the drawings weren't clear, but as far as I could tell, the ridge line continue. Do people understand what I mean by subservience? The extension should have a lower profile in some way or another than the main building to show that it is an extension rather. Yes, and this one, in as much as one can tell, is not subservient.
So it's level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any other comments about that? You say there were various levels of development, but we didn't, from a quick view on the street view, it didn't appear there was anything quite like this. And then I sort of saw bits of subservience. Well, that one might be at the end, but.
If it's the end,
Yeah, it's the end,
it's different.
Yeah, because there's no one.
I think you're in danger if you
Yeah.
keep it that caption there.
Yeah,
If next door
yeah,
to do the same,
yeah.
you turn it into a
And in fact, that one,
terrace, a row of houses.
although
Yeah,
that one the ridge is not subservient, it has a chamfer on it, which will reduce the shadowing.
Okay.
So,
Chairman,
yes,
so
Mr.
can you
Pemberton.
just clarify, so in planning terms then, if the extension is not subservient, is that an automatic reason for refusal?
No.
We get to the
I
objection.
don't think so. I think it is it's a balancing factor. So the point, when you're looking at whether it's overdevelopment or not, then one of the factors that they will consider is that. So it's not an absolute thing, but it's something that will carry significant weight in the overall balance in the decision. So, any further questions, then we'll perhaps invite, would you like to speak on this?
Yeah.
So, if you'd like to come by, you can speak from there.
Nice and friendly with you. Right.
Don't bite.
Yeah.
Unless you disagree with us.
We've been living in the property at 5 Loundyes Close for since 2003. It's just, I think from the back, more than the front really, but from the back, the way it's coming out so far. So where our kitchen window is, their kitchen window is coming out about 5 meters, I think it is. It's going to have a big column that's going to have the bedroom on top, I believe. So we're in south facing garden, so we get the sun all day, basically. And as it's coming over, especially in the summertime, it'll come over directly over us and it'll go down to the west. As it goes down to the west, that's when it's going to get where our patio is, and where my washing line is. It's going to get it's just going to be shadowing. And we're going to have nothing. We're going to have no sun at all.
Right.
And we both work. So by the time we get in from work, we're going to have, we can't even go out and enjoy, our patio that's been there for the past 20 years. So that's the biggest bugbear, really.
Yeah.
Is that we're not going to have any, any light. And also it might come into where our lounge area is as well, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the biggest bugbear, although I think it's a monstrosity, but that's just my opinion, unfortunately.
Planning authorities.
I know, but yeah.
Thank you very much. So any further comments on the basis of that? If not, would you like to make a Councillor McCann?
Yeah, part of the light, the shadowing could be addressed through the subservient issue.
Subservient.
Drop some pips on it. It'll affect how it's going to look, but that's a different issue.
Yeah.
Certainly from a casting shadows and stuff like that. I think that would also, it would help address it. But with a lot of these things, neighbours do tend to get quite protective about what they plan and what they don't plan. And if it does go ahead, then we should make sure that that doesn't have an impact on should the next person want to do exactly the same, that it doesn't restrict them. Because once that brick wall's up there, then you can't tie your brick wall to my brick wall sort of thing, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure how that works in planning terms. But certainly from a neighbour's perspective, I think.
Do we have, so do we have a drawing of a site plan? Was there a site plan?
No, but you get a good idea.
Yeah, I'm just wondering as to whether it does actually go literally to the boundary.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Yes, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Been more surprised if it didn't.
Yeah, it
Not a lot of
doesn't.
stuff there in.
No, it's, it does go to the boundary,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so,
but it's also a single brick. Where our sides connect,
yes.
it's just a single brick as well.
Mhm.
So when they demolish that,
Yes,
we're just hoping.
They'll have to double skin the other side, that's all.
yeah, so one thing, if you're sharing a wall,
Hmm.
you need to do a search on the internet for party wall agreement. That's outside of us, but that is something that you need to be familiar with. But anyway, moving back to this particular planning application, which is going right to the boundary, perhaps effectively impinging on the neighbour's property because of the nature of the wall. Do I have a proposal for what our view between, I'm suggesting something like to propose between no objection and objecting, and we'll come back to the conditions either way. If there's a pause, I'm going to propose then that we object and do so on the basis of overdevelopment, particularly the way that it extends right to the boundary and perhaps affects the neighbours, the wall, the shared wall with the neighbour, and the how dominating it is at the boundary.
Consideration to subserviency.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's it's overdevelopment with lack of subserviency.
Does that help?
Thank you.
I'd be happy to second that as well, Chair.
So that's been seconded. Those in favour of that? Thank you very much. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Councillors.
That's why I was looking up about that, the party wall rates, because it comes with
Okay.
responsibilities,
Right,
shall we say?
okay, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. In fact, I think it requires agreement, doesn't it? It does.
Hence, it comes with responsibility.
Yes. Yes.
Can't do it without information sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, you need to do your homework.
Okay.
That's all it is.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had to do that for the parish hall.
Exactly.
Okay, so thank you very much. Well, now that one's now concluded. We'll move on to the number 3, which perfectly welcome to say, but if you don't want to. Anyway, so move on to number 3, Thatcham Central and 28 Victor Road.
Thank you, Chairman. So application is to construct a 2-storey, 2-bedroom property adjoining on the first floor to the existing property number 28 to create a terrace of 3. So this garden plot here, the garage, if I move along, see there's another outbuilding to be demolished and a new property constructed. I'll come back to that one in a moment, but the current semi-detached properties, and this is the proposal. When I say it's attached on the first floor, as you can see here, this is a walkway through to the rear garden. And that is shown clearer.
Yeah.
Here, so as you can see, this is the first floor connecting, and here's the walkway through on the ground floor.
So it's a 3-bedroomed.
2 bedrooms, materials to match the existing property that it would be adjoined to.
Oh, right.
The street scene is a mix of semi-detached properties with a variety of extensions plus terraces of 4 further along the road. So As you can see, very similar properties, but as we go along here, this is a terrace of 4 here. But the majority are semi-detached properties. This is Hartmead Road here, just for context. Division of the existing garden space, off-street parking for 2 vehicles. Driveway parking for 2 vehicles of permeable surface and cycle storage provided. There is 1 representation objecting, and that is due to sightline, concerned about the sightlines, reduced daylight to adjacent properties and impact on the privacy of adjacent properties.
So have you got a plan to see how far away the adjacent property, the actual, I guess it's the gardens as much as the houses themselves? I assume it's the houses in Hartman Road that are impacted.
What we've got.
Yes, it'll be.
15.
Chairman, can I add a point as well for context? There is actually a live application for number 15 Hartmead Road for exactly the same type of property, as in a new well, it's slightly different. It's a 2-storey, 3-bed dwelling. So in theory, if both of these applications are passed, you'll have 2 brand new properties adjacent to each other on the corner of Victor Road and
Yeah.
And probably number 27 soon to follow.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so do we have any comments from? Councillor Pemberton.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess following on from the objector's comment about sightlines, I mean, I would also have concerns about opposing traffic movements. And I know we're not discussing the other application, number 15 Hartmead Road, but you're going to have multiple new entrances, presumably which would require drop curbs for vehicles entering and exiting those roads at the corner of a junction. Victor Road is not a particularly wide road. And there are often cars parked along it. It's quite close to a school. There's lots of school children, other pedestrians milling around. So, you know, that would be my.
Can I suggest then, I'll propose it from the chair, as we have more to come on, that we make no objections, subject to the council considering carefully the overlooking of neighbouring properties and subject to no objections from highways.
Well, that sounds it.
Well, no concerns from highways, I should say, because they. So with that, do we have a seconder for that proposal? No objection based on with those 2 conditions. Councillor Watts, those in favour of those? Thank you. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. So we go on to the latest in the line for Churchgate.
I mean, very.
Evolving development.
Okay, so this is the Grange here, and going for context, Churchgate is here. So it's this property here. The application is to facilitate the change from former use as a day nursery to a school suitable for students with special educational needs. Negligible external alterations, most of the changes are inside. And just to summarise them, structural will be retained in current form. Demolition of a 2nd floor stairs and gallery to reduce risk of falls. Installation of a mezzanine to remove the danger of falling over exposed balcony and provide create a usable space. To ensure the structure and fabric of the building is secure and up to standards to reduce risk of further defects. Internal reconfiguration of partitions and fireplaces enclosed, ceilings, walls and doors treated for fire safety regulations whilst protecting existing finishes where possible. External changes, installation of a fence along the top of a wall to the west to prevent unauthorised access, plus a new fence around grassed area to the east. Saw some doorways to be bricked up, although architraves will be retained and can be reopened in future. Replastering and some floorboards will be tested and some may need replacing. The design and access segment gives indication of the condition of the building at the moment. So I'll just scroll through these. So this is where the mezzanine is to be installed. Fireplace be covered. Doorways bricked up. And replastering.
I won't object to the replastering.
No.
No, that's, I don't know what to object.
And beams.
Is this building listed?
Yes.
It is, yes.
Okay.
That's why they're only doing the inside.
So yeah, that's why there's so much detail in the application. So,
I have one question, Chair.
yes,
And perhaps with your vast knowledge of planning, part of the detail says retrospective works comprising of.
Notice they've done something already.
Now, I wasn't aware that you could get retrospective listed building.
Oh, okay. Right.
Retrospective planning consent, absolutely, that's not a problem. But retrospective building,
Oh, yeah.
listed buildings,
Yeah.
that's unusual.
And retrospective works comprised.
Okay.
This is a
Oh, it's
Yeah.
question as much as
it's
anything.
a fence.
I have less experience than some councillors do about listed buildings.
I don't think you could get retrospect, but.
Okay, well, that's, I would generally leave that to West Berkshire Council to consider that we, in terms of the actual changes themselves, internal and that they are, I think, reversible. Can I suggest that we make no objections subject to no concerns from heritage? So can I change that, change the wording slightly? No objection but high weight should be given to any concerns by heritage.
That was different things confirmed.
Yeah.
Is there a question with regards to parking? I mean, if this is going to be a school, then there's going to be.
There is lots of parking now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
There's lots.
This is the latest in a series of planning applications as they progress the proposal.
They recently re-roofed it last summer.
Okay.
Because it wasn't cheap.
Okay,
Thank you,
so
John.
moving on to the prelude to the, sorry,
Did we vote on that?
we did, no, I proposed. Thank you for reminding me. So proposing that no objection, subject to the council giving a high weight to any views expressed by heritage. So that's my proposal. Do I have a seconder?
And yes,
For the count and those in favour, unanimous as well. Thank you. So moving on to retrospective but not listed.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, can't get down this street here, but it is this property here. And you'll see from the agenda it is retrospective application.
you can see there's a window.
And though they look opposite on here, they're not quite on the local plan, you can see they're not directly opposite. But they obviously have the single dormers here in their roof. There is no dormer, it is 4 floodlights to the front of the property, 2 to the front and 4 to the rear. There is potential overlooking,
And I think I can see, just go back to, I think I can see a similar thing at the end of the road.
Exactly what I was going to bring up, is the fact that he's already done it.
Yeah, and I recall other ones in this,
Number 17. You go down to the bottom, you
might be,
should be able to see it on there.
possible overlooking
Yeah.
of these properties, yeah, but no, there is no representations from any neighbours.
Yeah.
If you could pull up the previous picture. Can't please. Just at the very bottom of the street, you'll see there's a pitched roof with two veluxes.
Yeah.
Left and right, with the light shining through, it looks like it goes straight through, but
yeah,
that would be.
I would
Yeah.
suggest though that they're not overlooking anyone.
Oh, absolutely not.
There, no, no, no.
I think that's,
so can I propose that we make no objections to the ones on the front, no objections to the ones on the rear, subject to consideration of overlooking.
Sounds weird.
And do I have a seconder for that?
Yes.
Councillor McCann got it. Those in favour of making no objection subject to those conditions, thank you, that's agreed. Which brings us on to the second,
you can have the next.
the second major application of the evening.
Oh, that, yes.
Okay, so for the benefit of anyone watching the YouTube in future, to inform them that we received a presentation from West Berkshire, from Thames Valley Police in advance of this meeting, where they presented the proposals and we asked some questions about it. So to give you some history, there was previously a planning application, outline planning application, largely for access on this site. And at that time, the only form of access would have been onto the A4.
That's right.
And we objected to it on that basis, and it was approved as an outline application by West Berkshire Council. So there is already outline approval for, I think it's B2, B8, warehousing and light industrial on this site. Subsequently, the Thames Valley Police have developed this proposal, and I'll hand over to the clerk if you'd like to introduce this proposal.
Okay, so just to say that the application has been called in by West Berkshire Council. At its highest point, the building is 17.5 metres tall. There are 369 car parking spaces, plus 18 disability spaces. On the application, the hours of operation and the number of employees wasn't specified, but we did have that clarified in the presentation earlier this evening, that it would be around about 400 employees, and 20 to 30% would be commuting in from outside of the area. And basically standard operating hours Monday to Friday, roughly. It will not be an operational response centre. It will be for research and development. Excuse me. As you've said, the access and egress will be onto Gables Way rather than the A4. It is considered to be high quality employment opportunities. And Midgham Parish Council have objected, citing flood risk, the height of the building and ribbon development. And there are 8 other objections on the portal, covering height, flooding, habitat and increased vehicle movements.
Thank you. So just to clarify here, the site is in Midgham Parish.
Yeah.
But right on the boundary of Thatcham Parish, and indeed the entrance and exit is through Thatcham Parish in Gables Way. So the traffic is actually, the consequence of the traffic is in Thatcham, even though the building is in Midgham. And anything else I need to say? Oh, I'd say generally about flood risk, that it is a condition of any planning application that it has adequate sustainable drainage. And West Berkshire Council, because of the history of flooding, does have a good track record on assessing that very carefully. So personally, I've not not unduly concerned about that being a problem in practice, because it will not get approval unless that is addressed, even if it's not in detail at the moment. And I did ask earlier on about this, and that there's further work going on, and there will have to be conditions to address those points as part of the approval, should it be approved. So, hand over to Councillor Lunn.
I have a question with regards to if they're providing 300 and how many parking spaces?
369 plus 18.
And they're expecting 30 to 40% of their 400 staff to be commuting. That's a rather large parking area for that.
And I think the point is they will be commuting from their existing, because they're consolidating their work. I think the number they're talking about from commuting is the number that will be commuting from their where they're working at the moment, rather than people who are driving in from local communities. That was how I interpreted it.
I see.
And of course, there are spaces for visitors as well. Councillor McCann.
I have as the newbie here, some councils have not an informal agreement, shall we say, with their surrounding parishes and towns, where if they raised an objection, then that would almost by default silence the nearest parish, if you see what I'm saying.
Yes.
I don't think we have anything like that here, and we haven't historically gone down that road, because Cold Ash is objecting to something in X, Y, and Z. I just want to clarify, we don't have anything like that. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Right. Yeah.
So, Councillor Pemberton.
Yeah, just if you could clarify something for me. I think the clerk said that this application's been called in by West Berkshire Council. So do you mean by that that at some future points will end up before Eastern Area Planning? Okay,
Guaranteed.
right.
I think it's.
Why are we?
I think it's because of the scale of the development, it automatically gets referred to Eastern Area Planning.
It's under the major, part of the application, because
Yeah.
it's major development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By default.
So I should probably.
Yeah.
No.
So,
We've got 11,
we have three options before us. Normally speaking, we only you support things where they have a social benefit. And this one has potentially has a social benefit. On the other hand, it has the parish within which the development lies has objected to it.
Yeah.
There was a discussion earlier on about the height of the building.
Yeah.
And not everybody present was because it's three floors of office level plus quite a substantial portico above to mask the plant that will be on the roof.
What's it called?
And not all of the councillors were convinced that needed to be quite as high as it was.
That's true.
So
with home working. Such
I mean, the height of that portico was nearly 3 metres.
Extra bit.
The extra bit above the building. So they were talking about R&D, which might involve. Anyone have a strong view as to which way we should go?
I think we should have agreed that we should have something like that in our patch.
Okay, so the question is, do we support it or do we make no objection to it on the basis that the parish directly affected has objected? So,
I'd be quite happy for it to come to us. The height issues, I think
so
that.
I was gonna come back as a request.
So 400 jobs in this area is good.
But they are skilled jobs,
Exactly.
not warehousing, which is the alternative.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
right. Councillor Davidson.
Asked as well, what is ribbon development? That was one of the objections from the adjacent parish, wasn't it?
Going along a road, sort of a lengthy, extending along a road, all the way along the road. Yeah.
They got it.
Yeah.
We used to call it creeping development.
Got it.
Yeah. So,
Understood.
But of course, the history of this site, it was part of the Northeast Thatcham Master Plan as well. So it was sort of identified at that point as being as part of that, and it was a bit unfortunate that it came forward for application independently of that. But having done so, and it got the approval, which might in principle ended up with a warehouse on here.
Yeah, that's what we were.
Yeah. So, so do people, well, I'd like someone to propose taking the options between making no objection and supporting. And then we'll work on the surrounding text. Which would someone like to propose one of those two?
Well, I lost one vote tonight, so I'll propose we accept it.
Support it, is that support? Support it, okay. So the point is that we can I suggest that we support the principle of the development? But noting the objections of Midgham Parish Council.
Yeah.
We particularly request that they consider the feasibility of reducing the height of the building, and particularly the portico above the 3 floors.
Yes.
And pay particular attention to the proposals for sustainable drainage.
Yeah.
I would like to add one further thing, that if we, I don't know if you've got I haven't got the site plan on available, but the original, the area it's what's called the red line is not the whole of the site. And the bit to the south is outside of their red line, so it's not actually controlled here. And I would suggest that the council considers the feasibility of putting a condition that is not subsequently developed.
Yeah, because that's what they were saying they were planting. And
Well, yeah, yes, but there's a difference between saying something and it being planning.
Pretty proud.
So the proposal is that we support the principle, but with the expressing concerns, those concerns, and requesting those matters from the concerns of Mitcham are considered as I described. Did you have those recorded as?
Could we throw in a couple of other
Certainly.
comments, if at all possible, Chair? About electrical charging points for
electrical cars.
the car park.
Yeah.
And if you've got 300 cars or 360 cars, I don't know what the rate is at the minute, but whatever that rate is, it should be appropriate.
Mm.
And also about can they use the roof for generating electricity, putting solar panels and stuff like that on it, because it's about keeping it greener as much as possible.
Yes.
You know, it's not, they're going to be reducing the height of the building.
It wasn't because you've got the 3 floors of office, but then you've got this almost another floor.
Yeah, no.
Porticos around the high voltage, the HVAC. So rather than having that wall, if they were to make it solar panels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A good way to help greening.
Yes. They did talk about biodiversity net gain, because it's the surrounding of the building is quite expansive, and they've got it's fairly long. So
This is me.
yeah. So I think those 2 points, and particularly because that number of car parking spaces and that number of electric charging points might actually require a new 3 kV feed into the.
They're upgrading Thatcham substation anyway.
Yeah.
I think in the next year or two.
They're running a new power cable in.
I know.
Beanham, but no, so from. What's the one to the south?
Kodash and.
No, that from.
So.
What's the next bit as you long from you?
Oh, Brimpton.
Brimpton, the power cable going from the station to Brimpton underground. Anyway.
Underground.
Cool.
So with those points, I propose that do we have a seconder for supporting it with those caveats? Thank you, Councillor London. Those in favour of supporting it with those caveats, and noting that Councillor in view of it being called in, has decided not to abstaining, not to vote. Thank you very much.
Mention the solar panels.
And the biodiversity.
On there.
The fishing rights.
We didn't ask about Desmoulian world snails earlier on. We didn't.
Oh,
We did talk about what's on.
Desmoulian world snails.
that's the Newbury Pine Pass this year, is that one?
Was that one? But apparently, that part of the Kennet Valley is one of the largest habitats for them.
It's a real.
Oh, so we can't do this thing at Hambridge.
Anyway, moving on, we have 4 applications which we would not normally consider. Right. Received any representations?
We haven't.
Anyone, any councillor wish to raise concerns about those? So thank you. So we will note those applications and move on to decision notices.
Just want to highlight, Chairman, 39 Lower Way. Town Council resolved no objection, but with disappointment that the timber cladding finish of the extension does not match the existing dwelling. The application was approved, and in the report, West Berkshire Council have stated the Town Council comments regarding materials are noted. However, it is not considered that the use of timber cladding will have any harmful impact on the character area, given that the development is set to the rear. Details of the proposed cladding has been submitted and is acceptable.
But if you don't say your bit, you know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we'll then move on to an item of unpredictable duration. West Berkshire local plan examination.
Yeah.
So the history here is that the West Berkshire Council submitted the plan for examination in March last year under delegated authority to officers. In December, the council was intending to vote to withdraw the local plan, and it was instructed by a Minister of State not to do so on the day of that council meeting. Because of that, we hadn't taken any action to respond to questions that the inspector had already submitted, because it would have become a moot point if it had been withdrawn. But we now have to, because it has not been withdrawn. So at the last 2 meetings of the council, I submitted documents which were sort of an outline of the response that I was suggesting that we make. And that comes in 2 stages. The inspector has requested responses, or requires responses to sections 1 to 3 of the questions, which are the general principles, by this coming Friday at midday. And then about a month later, I think the 22nd of March, he requires the responses to the remaining questions. So following on from the outlines that was noted and endorsed by the council meetings, I have developed this response. There's only 2 items which I haven't addressed, which was the comments about the availability of office and industrial space because of the empty buildings in Vodafone and Quantel / Snell and Wilcox, because we had not commented on that previously, and therefore it wasn't appropriate to add it at this stage. So with that, this covers the key points. And the other thing to say is that these questions fall into 2 categories. So the Regulation 19 consultation was largely about the soundness of the local plan as it was submitted. But there are another of related legal questions which have to be fulfilled in order for the plan to proceed. The first one being the duty to cooperate, and the second one being the sustainability assessment, and they are covered under different legal provisions than Regulation 19. And the inspector clearly has concerns about both of those in the way that he phrased the questions. And I have highlighted our concerns in these responses to those points. And if you've read the document, apologies for the late submission, you will have seen it's written in somewhat legalistic language, because the inspector is asking for evidence and not opinion. So with that, I will pause on the introduction. I think that's enough, and ask if anybody has any questions about the content of this particular document. Madam Clerk, do you have any comments yourself or anything you wish to highlight?
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So if no one has any comments to raise, so with that, I would therefore propose from the chair that we approve this document for submission, with the obvious changes that the draft watermark is removed and the highlighting on the front cover. That it has been approved, and request that the clerk do so fairly quickly to meet that firm deadline of midday. And just to let you know that at Regulation 19, I made my own submission and will therefore be making my own representation on some points that I have in addition, largely relating to information that I have obtained from Freedom of Information requests about the evidence that the inspector is seeking, which supports the positions expressed here, but obviously Freedom of Information requests are not available to the council to include in its documentation. So I propose that we didn't vote on it. I propose that from the floor that we approve that. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you for Councillor Pemberton. And those in favour of that we submit, thank you, and thank you. That's unanimous. And therefore we move on to planning matters. Planning matters received since the publication of the agenda. Anything to reports there?
No, Chairman. Nothing.
Thank you. So moving on to agenda item 8A, the closure of Thatcham level crossing. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, nothing more to add. than
Nothing more to add.
No. It's quite in the middle of the night anyway.
Yeah, I think this is less of a disruption than the previous closure of the road.
Yes, well, we did notice, yeah.
At least they waited for the water to disappear.
Outstanding highways
What's the matter
matters.
now? Yeah, it's worse than Brimpton Road.
So no outstanding highways matters, and then to move over to receive traffic management. Both received since the publication of the agenda, and I think you have one too.
2 items, Chairman. Brookham Hill will be closed on the 19th of February between 9:30 AM and 3:30 PM from its junction with Chamberhouse Mill Lane to close proximity to a property known as the Hay Barn. The closure is to enable Volker Highways to carry out permanent carriageway repairs.
What date was that?
19th of February.
Void.
Yeah.
And notification was received yesterday that Footpath 20A is currently closed
Oh,
and will
yeah.
be open on the 2nd of March. The closure is between junction with Station Road and Druce Way, and it's to enable Scottish and Southern Power Distribution to install low voltage cabling.
Okay, so if I can add a bit, that's only a partial story of that closure. So last week I drove past and noticed that it was closed and went and investigated, and I saw that there was a street works permit. But the street works permit enables you to carry out work on a highway, but not to close it. And the public footpath is a highway. So I looked through the previous issues of the Newbury Weekly News for the traffic regulation order and found none. So I made inquiries to West Berkshire Council. By the way, this work is being carried out on behalf of West Berkshire Council. And there was an officer for repairs to streetlight cabling, and there was an officer of West Berkshire Council present when I was investigating. So I wrote to West Berkshire, or sent an email to West Berkshire Council inquiring if there was a traffic regulation order, and apparently there wasn't because it's now been issued as an emergency. So thank you very much. That's regularised the situation that was there already. So if no one else got any comments, I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. Meeting is closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.